Okay, it is live streaming to YouTube.
Great.
So that makes the recording easier.
Okay.
We don't have to, because we're using up all our cloud space by recording to the cloud.
Okay.
Yep.
So the way I practiced my little video sharing was there was a way you could share a portion of my screen.
Yes.
And then I was just going to play the video.
My problem
Right.
right now is I have two windows open and I'm getting an echo
Oh, okay.
because I've got the Zoom and the YouTube going.
Oh, right.
So let me
And then Karen wanted to share some insights. I'm going to go grab my water.
yeah, you do that, and I will I expect to be at the meeting place at about 1/4 after,
Okay.
but I'm going to pull over here in a minute and hand the host duties over to you.
Okay. Great. They can just join the Zoom, and then once you get there, we can hook up the whatever and
Exactly.
go from there. Great.
Yeah. Make host. Okay, you are now the host.
No, there's no reason to.
Lindy, are you back?
No. What? Oh, no, I was just looking at my calendar. Yeah, no, I already did that. Pretty full for Thursday.
Conversation was fine.
Yeah.
I just can't.
'Cause I had to be there at night anyway. I could always leave in the afternoon and get there, and then if I have to be there. What I need to do really has to be done at night. I'll just stay over Thursday night and then come home Friday. What's that?
I'm not on the screen yet. I'm not on there yet. Yes. I just. Okay.
Oh, all right.
Oh, they can see you.
I made you host, Lindy.
Yeah, I just saw that and I just switched it. Now, can Karen and I be both hosts or?
Yeah, I think go in on her her little 3 dots, and I believe you can make her a co-host.
Yeah, a co-host. Okay, so. Oops,
I
wait a
can
minute.
share without being host. You should be able to see my screen.
Oh, well, there you are. Yeah,
There you go.
Okay.
it is.
I'm going to kill my mic and see you guys when I get to the building.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
Hi, Karen. I don't know if you guys can see me. Hi.
No, your video isn't on.
Oh, I'll go check. I just want to say you cut off your hair.
I did.
It
Boy,
looks
is it comfortable with a bee veil. It's
Right.
not in my face anymore.
good.
Just- I had a hair appointment one day when I was trying to work bees and I had a baseball cap on to keep my hair out of my face. And it kept falling down in front of my face like that. And I said, that's it. When I went to the hairdresser, I said, whack it off.
It looks cute. Okay, let's see if I can find. It does, Vicky, it does say that well, what it says is stop video, so that makes it sound like
Huh.
they
You're
can't see.
just all black.
Well, I felt that way many times.
Mm. You don't have anything in front of your video camera, right?
No,
I've been known to do that. On purpose, really.
Yeah.
Block it off.
I see some people, they'll be on Zoom and you'll see them reaching towards their camera and put
Right there.
black tape on it and then they disappear. I guess they don't realize they can just shut the camera off.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing in photos, Karen. That's awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. I saw Keith's post, so I figured while we're waiting for him to get
Yeah,
there.
he's still, I think, about 15 minutes out, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna check and make sure nobody's emailing.
is there anything that I should know that I don't see anything to click on? I have something that says stop video, but that's it.
Is your video turned on?
Right, if you go into you
It
can
might be
find
your settings.
Are you on a like a
Laptop or desktop or tablet.
thank
Yes,
you.
laptop.
So not an app.
No, and let's see.
Somehow get to your settings, which is, for me, it's up in the upper right.
Let me see what happens here.
Probably the laptop settings.
Vicky, how do I get to the laptop on here?
When you hover down at the bottom of your screen, are there different selections that you can make?
Yes, but nothing relevant. Mute, stop video, participants chat, share screen, record, show captions, reactions, and apps.
If you go on stop video and that little arrow icon,
Uh-huh.
and it gives you a pull-up menu. And then there's a little thing, there's one of the menu items is video settings,
Yep, I just clicked on it. Let's see.
and that'll pull up your main thing. And if it's not Zoom, then you would have to go to your computer settings. And it might be something in your computer.
I got that list of things. Okay, let's see.
That right there. Never mind, click outside.
Mm,
Click on HD.
I think this Zoom thing is pretty much just, is your video on and off?
Yeah.
You know it's on.
Otherwise, you'll have to go to your computer
HD
settings.
again. Click on HD again. Just click. Okay, now click on this one. I don't know. I don't know how else to tell you.
Well, I can listen to you guys, and I do see Karen's photos.
Okay.
Well, good.
Okay, I don't know,
So-
and I have my computer expert on over my shoulder, and he doesn't either.
My thought is that it might be in your computer settings
How do I get to those?
for Windows. So if you're in
Okay.
Windows, you have that little start menu window in the bottom left-hand corner.
Okay.
And if you go over there and go for that little cog wheel thing that brings up all of your settings. And there's somewhere in there you would find your video settings.
Yeah.
All right, now I have to get everything back up here.
Well, we got a screen that says video. But one thing it
We're-
says is touch up my appearance.
Right. No, that's probably Zoom.
Oh, it probably, yes, it is Zoom, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Zoom,
Okay.
you can do that. I'm thinking that your issue might be with your actual computer.
Okay, it's all right. I don't want to.
Yeah, we can. You guys
Yeah.
can figure that out, maybe.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. We'll see you next
So-
time.
Yeah, we'll see you next. We'll see you sooner or
Okay.
later.
Yeah. Great.
And I want to start by talking about these 3 swans. They're all from the same colony. I don't remember well, in 2010, because I have the date of the pictures, I was asked to move a colony of bees for somebody. It had been their father's and they had
What's
passed
this?
away. And they had one colony
fun.
at his house and they wanted it moved. So I went to move them and the bottom board was so rotten, I couldn't move them. I couldn't pick them up. They were on a great big rock. And the rock in the rotting box had a hole so they could come and go, but they had absolutely no bottom board.
Don't click on any of those.
So I moved them.
Hold on, Karen. Hey, Deborah, can you? Oh, great. You just muted yourself. Great. If everyone
Yeah,
could mute
everyone other than
themselves,
Karen, mute yourselves.
that would be great. Thanks.
So I went back and got a bottom board and then I went to move the colony and when I was investigating them before I got the new bottom board, there was like 1 cup of bees in that box. And I thought they're never going to make it. So I moved it to her house anyway. And then, well, it wasn't on June 10th. It might have been early May. And then she called me because they swarmed. So the first swarm was this, and it was this little tiny red maple tree. And that was so easy to grab hanging off that little skinny branch. It was like, the center of the swarm was like waist high. And then she called me again. I didn't go through the colony. She didn't want me to. They were just, I don't know, in her yard as pets. So again, on June 3rd, she called me and they kicked out this swarm. So you can, it was a virgin queens. Sometimes the colony will swarm after with a virgin queen and they still have cells in there. So then on June 4th, the very next day, she called me again and it was this swarm. So, it's really a good idea, even after a swarm, just not assume that there's no other queens in there or she's gone around and killed all her sisters, because that's not always what happens. Sometimes the bees will actually hold the queen hostage in a cell and feed her through a little tiny crack where she's trying to chew out and keep repairing it with wax. And then later on released her and, and swarm with that queen that they release, or swarm with the first queen, keep the queen separated. So, you can't, just don't always assume that that's going to be the only swarm, because that little tiny colony grew so fast. I don't know what race of bees they were, and they kicked out those 3 swarms in a very short time together. And I don't know what was in the colony after those flew out, because I never looked into her colony after I moved them. And notice how they're always on the same tree. Swarms kind of mark, and it's really sad if your first swarm is way up in the top of a 40-foot pine, because that's probably, unless you cut down that tree, that's probably where they're going to always go, because they tend to leave some type of pheromone or little bits of wax, which I have seen, little bits of wax on the area they land on. And it's like a calling card for future swarms in future years, not just for that one season. So, anyways, in the early spring, when the colony is stimulated by, an early flow, and you have proper weather, and you really think they need room, if it's cold out, don't put the room above them, put it below them. Just place an extra brood box under the hive that needs room, because all the heat is up under this inner cover and this cover. And if you put a cold box above, you're going to really mess up. You're going to lose brood. There's a good chance you could get European foul brood because you'll chill the brood. So early spring, and you can see it's really early in this picture because the grass isn't really even growing yet. You're going to put the box underneath. It doesn't even matter if it's an empty box. It can be all foundation. It's just when they need that room, you can put a box underneath. And it really benefits them by giving that extra space, the sensation of extra space, even though they may not even use it. They have that feeling that they've got that extra space. So you place the box underneath. And if it's drawn comb, as it heats up, a really prolific queen is going to go down and start laying if she really needs room. But just remember, go underneath, don't start above when it's cold, when it's still cold at night. This picture was taken April 13th. It was 2017. I don't know what the temperature was then, but some yards I found are more prone to chilled brood and EFB than other yards. The yards that are low and damp are more prone to EFB than high yards. Just keep the bees in the sun. That really helps.
What would you say like a typical temperature would be like cold would be 30s or 40s?
Yeah, in the low
Yeah.
30s, and low 40s. And the box has to be warm. If you're going to put it above, the box has to be warm. You have to pre-warm your boxes. Never put a cold box above when the nights are cold, because it's just going to draw heat away from your cluster. So try to, put it somewhere and maybe put an empty box under it and stick a light bulb in the empty box so the heat from the light bulb will rise up and warm up those combs before you put it on. Because if you put a cold box on because your queen needs room, she's not going to go up there for a long time, because the bees have to warm up those cells, warm up the wax, and she won't she won't touch her feet on wax unless it's about 95 degrees. And it will take a long time for the bees to warm that up. So you're not going to be adding room by adding a cold box. Has to be a warm box. My bee truck had a cab on it, and I would stack my boxes inside the cab and park it in the sun, in a hot area where the sun was on it, and get the box fairly warmed up before I brought them out and put them on the bees, the first boxes I would be using. So, and the big buildup, the big buildup starts with red maple, but it's not really the swarming buildup. It's when the bees just really take off. They'll only swarm when they're running out of room or the queen is old. There's reasons why they swarm, but if they need to keep the amount of comb they have warm, and that affects the buildup. So if the cluster size is really small and they can't expand because the comb is cold, then they're not going to grow and expand. So if you have a really tiny bit of bees in a box, I would knock them down to a 5-frame nuke or something so they can start expanding by getting the comb warm, because the comb getting warm is a really important factor with expansion. If you can get more of the combs close to brood temperature by warming them or they have to warm them, and they have to get the granulated honey out of it. They have to soften the granulated honey and move it so the queen can use that space. And they can't do that if the outside comb is warm. So the bees need to really organize that space, that brood space, until the comb becomes warm enough for the queen to lay and expand out that brood nest. They're moving honey and they're moving nectar, and they move it further out from the existing brood nest, but they won't do that. They can't do it if it's crystallized and cold and the frames are cold. So a barrier of several inches of honey, sealed honey and frames will really prevent expanding the brood nests. So if they can't move the honey, I would reduce them. I wouldn't just assume that they're not moving it for some reason and move the frames out and put other frames next to it. Because if you're moving cold frames in next to your brood, it's gonna hurt the brood. So just really be aware of the temperature. But the swarm control strategy that I have I start planning it when the red maple is in full bloom, because that's when the bees really get going. You really notice the real difference in their whole excitement, and they're like going crazy at the front of the colony. They're bringing in that kind of pale greenish grayish pollen from the maples, and it's the first really nectar flow that really gets them going. So that's when I start planning my splits, when I would plan splits when I lived in Maine. So then you have to know when this is happening, what are you going to do to prevent swarming? Because now this is when you start. Are you going to split your colony? Are you going to try reversing boxes? If it's cold weather, you're better off, supering from the bottom instead of the top, because of the brood nest needs that heat. If you start at the top because it's warmer, you might want to bait those supers, raise up a couple frames or two of capped brood to get them to start going up there, because they don't really want to go there. Sometimes they're stubborn to move. They're really stubborn in the early spring. Or you can drip syrup on the face of the comb to get them to move up there.
You wouldn't really bait though with brood until it's pretty warm.
Until it's warm,
though,
right? Yeah, you could drip syrup on the comb, but there's all kinds of ways when you're ready to get them to move by moving some brood up.
Right.
You got to remember that eggs and capped brood can withstand a colder temperature than open brood. Eggs and capped brood.
Yeah, what is the capped brood numbers?
Well, I can tell
Or
you this.
roughly.
When we were trying to freeze capped brood with liquid nitrogen to test for hygienic behavior,
Yep.
the Italians froze really quick, that
Huh.
brood. But for some reason, it took like 3 pours to get the carniolans dead.
Wow.
So certain races can withstand cold better than other ones, that's what that taught
Interesting.
me. I was so surprised that
Yeah, I wonder if there's been studies about that.
I don't know, but carnies do fly in colder weather and do better.
Yeah.
They're a better cold weather bee.
Right.
So the brood the cap brood, I can't say that the open brood can withstand a colder temperature, but I know the cap brood, and I
Right.
know eggs can withstand a cooler temperature, and cap brood can withstand a cooler temperature. Full supers of foundation shouldn't be added until the honey flow has begun, or drawing out frames for the future. If you're just adding full frames of foundation, draw frames out for the future, then I would wait until the greatest danger of swarming has passed, because foundation is not room. I would keep giving them drawn comb or checkerboarding it with drawn comb, but not put on a full super of foundation until the swarming season is past. I would just keep giving them place to store that nectar. And that's like mid-June, really, for the nectar. The biggest nectar flow kind of goes by mid-June, because the dandelions are kind of petering out and the trees are petering out. So when as you need available resources, the bees need that. They need longer, warmer days. You need a drone abundance. They won't swarm without drones. They need a congested nest and want them to swarm. You will notice a lack of open brood. If you're going through your colony and you see no open brood, That's because they're chasing that queen around and making her lose weight and shrinking up her ovaries. And then they'll also swarm with a weak pheromone, an aging queen. There may be eggs, but there may not be a lot of them, and because the queen has a weak pheromone, and they'll take that older queen and swarm out with her, because you got to remember swarming is about a reproduction of the genes of the colony. So then they'll reproduce a new queen. So here's a really old queen I had. You could see her wings are all beat up, and don't ask me why. Like, did the bees chew on them? What happened? Because she was in a colony, her spots getting worn off. She was an old decrepit girl. So as the days get warmer, the buildup really accelerates, and the bees, they want more comb, and they're able to warm more comb. So then it's not really your responsibility if you're giving them comb to pre-warm it, but the population explodes. And they become crowded. So an early nectar flow or a leftover winter feed that always threatens to plug up the developing colony. So, if they're plugged out with winter feed, you're gonna have to either spin the frames out or give them some other drawn frames, because that really reduces the brood rearing area, and that also will induce early swarming. Before you expect it, you'll get early swarming when they're plugged out with winter feed, or you end up with a very early nectar flow, say earlier than you normally would. So you got to really pay attention to the plants. And then you're faced with the decision about making a split, adding honey supers to make more room available for the bees. You have to decide what your management plan is going to be. And hopefully, like, this before the nectar flow starts, you know if you want to make splits, and you know if you're going to prevent swarming. You really should, you got to be proactive, not reactive. And then always be prepared for a swarm. Always have that extra equipment and your little swarm kit ready to go if you find a swarm in your yard or somebody calls with a swarm.
Did you ever
cells, yeah.
Did you find did you use pollen patties to like boost production, or did you find that kind of works as far as brood rearing?
Pollen patties, like I have pollen patties on my colonies now for about 2.5 weeks up here. We did start having pollen come in about a week ago, but my season is so much slower. Now, I did use pollen patties in Maine because I was getting my colonies brooded up because I sold a lot of nukes. I split every colony once and some colonies twice. Or my second split, I combined frames from different colonies all together to make a nuke, because young bees don't fight and you can do that. So I might have taken 1 or 2 frames from this colony and a frame from that colony to create a nuke. So it, the pollen patty is your own choice. Now, if there's a long rain, like, we're having a rain, I'm glad I have pollen patties on my colonies right now. Well, I looked at the weather, we're going to have 5 days of rain and heavy wind, and my bees had started bringing in alder pollen. So they were in full gear. Let's get that queen laying mode. And then we go through 5 days of rain. So I didn't want them to cannibalize the eggs. So I did give them all a pollen patty to get through this rainy period. So anyways, you have to just watch that weather. If there's queen cells that are advanced or completed, removal will only postpone swarming. It is not going to stop swarming. Once they get it in their little heads to swarm, they're going to do it. Your best choice for that is not to scrape the capped queen cells, because they're just going to keep trying to do it, and they're going to get sneaky and hide them on you, and they will swarm. So you're better off just to split. And if you don't want that many colonies, just the best queen, take your best queen later in the season. If all the queens are good, give away the extra queens and combine them back together and go back to the number that you're comfortable with. But it's better than losing them in the trees, and it's better than freaking out your neighbors with swarms being in their yards. If the colony is just beginning to have queen cells, providing more room is really important, because then you can remove all the cells You've got to get room on there, and it has to be drawn comb. And it will be necessary to examine the colony again in a week to 10 days to ensure that they didn't start more cells, but that usually does deter them, because that's not about reproduction, it's about lack of space. But the queen cells have to be open and not far advanced. I have some pictures of queen cells later in my pictures so I can show you. And when you add brood comb, just remember, when you're adding new comb for the queen to have space, it's even when the weather's warm, it's going to take 3 to 5 days for the queen to go on those combs. The bees do what I call condition it. It's like they spit shine them. If you ever look at the comb before you give it to the bees and then look at it 3 or 5 days later, it's all shiny on the very bottoms. They're getting it ready for the queen to lay in there, but she won't lay in it until they do what's called conditioning the combs. And the comb surface has to be 93 degrees or between 93 and 95 before that queen's even going to step foot on it. So as an example, reversing two-story brood chambers for expansion of the broodness that people want to do to eliminate swarming. You have to do it a good week before you're trying to eliminate the swarming, because the queen's not going to go in that other box until it's conditioned and the frames are warm. If it's been on the bottom, the frames are cold. The bees haven't conditioned those frames to get them ready for that queen to lay in. So you have to do it before you think you need it. Before you think it needs to happen, you have to do it before you even think about it, basically, is what I'm saying, because it's important. When to super, supering, people think that supering is the only possible response to the nectar flow, that it comes too early, but early supering can be harmful. So if you store your supers, and I said before, in a cold place, warm them before you're putting them on the bees. If you have an early nectar flow, they'll go into them a lot quicker. They'll move nectar into them quicker. Just warm them up beforehand. This was, I had a rim on the colonies for giving them mountain camp feeding and sugar patties. And you can see I didn't get it off fast enough. And look at all that lovely drone brood. So, also, sometimes they do get ahead of you. They can be so fast, because I would go through my bees about every 10 days and they would have done that within that period. And how to tell there's a nectar flow, you can determine by the color of the wax. New white wax, it can be on the top bars or on the combs, means the nectar flow has started. Wax is only produced according to supply and demand. So there's never any unnecessary wax production in a beehive, because it's too expensive. It takes too much honey and too much time and everything like that. So generally newly constructed wax is that beautiful white color. It could be the very light yellow. It depends on the nectar flow. I've noticed that the plants the bees are working affect the color of the wax. But if you see in brown wax on the top of your frames or wax this color, they're just redistributing the old wax. They will do that too. So that's not a nectar flow. It's just the bees moving wax around. They might be moving some old wax around because they want the queen to start laying drone brood or something. And there's not quite enough nectar flow to build this new comb like this that's very delicate and nice and pure white. Italians tend to have a lighter comb, and other races like Carnies tend to have a darker comb. Italians are known for their nice white comb. That's why they're a popular bee for comb honey, because it's always a very pretty, clean looking white wax that it's made out of. And they always have that little air bubble under the wax cap. When it's sunk down, it's called wet cappings. I don't have a picture of that, but that's not as desirable as a comb honey is one with a tight, slight air bubble under it. So when you're gonna super, the colonies need at least 5 times the space to dry nectar than they do to store the resulting honey. So putting on supers as soon as the weather is settled and the brood boxes are full of bees, it's a good idea to get them on there. So 5 times the space. So if you're, I don't over super to start with, but I always start with 2 supers because otherwise they're going to start backfilling the brood nest because that nectar is so wet, they have to evaporate it. So I always start with 2 drawn supers and then I go from there. So, and in supering, in my experience, means adding the boxes above the brood chamber, not under the brood chamber. So when I start supering, those boxes go above the brood chamber. And you got to know the difference between your supers and your brood chambers. And it's really important these days with, brood combs being exposed to miticides and different things like that. You don't want that near your honey crop. So if you're using all mediums, make sure you paint the boxes a different color or do something to mark them so you don't get things all messed up. And when there's no place to put the nectar, they will backfill. And this is what backfilling looks like. They put nectar where the queen should be laying. Whoops, jumped. And so if you see that, you're in trouble. They tend to not move that really rapidly, and it will cause swarming. Right there is that backfilling. So swarm signs, like I said, you're going to have a restless queen. She's going to be running on the frames. You're not going to see eggs or very young, what we call milk brood. They'll be, these aren't swarm cups. These are just queen cups. Bees just like to make those for some reason. That's like, we call it furniture. They like to add furniture to their home. So those aren't swarm cells, but this is a swarm cell. You can see this little tiny larvae, and it's on the bottom of a frame. That is a swarm cell that I could scrape off. I could find all of them and scrape them off and make sure I added room in the proper way, and I probably could deter the bees from swarming. But if it was elongated, I'm not going to change their mind. They're going to always be. I'm going to always have to be after them about their swarming. So, an abundance of capped brood cells, the availability of empty drawn comb for the queen to lay in, when that's not available, when they backfill, all those things, congested brood nests, all those things are what cause signs of swarming. So you'll have to watch for those things. So this cell is too far gone. If I scrape that is not going to deter them from swarming. And if I move that frame around a lot and I knock that larvae down away from the royal jelly that's up at this end, if you did that, you're going to end up with a really elongated queen cell like this, because the bees will keep adding food, feeding that larvae and adding, elongating that cell to keep that queen growing. And that makes a really poor queen. It can make a really poor queen because you don't know how well she was truly fed. So if you've got to handle your frames really, really carefully when this queen, if you want to keep the queen cells, and at this point you might as well, because you're not going to deter the queen. I would just split at this point. I would wait. I would probably catch my older queen and make a nuke without disturbing these cells too much, and put that nuke, someplace else, and let them go through with requeening. I would scrape all queen cells except maybe 2 or 3, and I would let them follow through with reproducing, with making that queen. And then as, say, day 15 or 16, or, well, you can really tell because they start thinning down the wax. See how that they've taken off some of that wax that's kind of like a peanut shell looking. and then they really thin it down and the queen starts coming out. So I watch the thinning of the cells. So I know when that queen probably is going to come out, because they may have snuck those cells up on me. But there is a time frame, like these cells are like 8 or 9 days old. So as you really watch the cells and start taking pictures of them, so you can just look at a cell and know how old that cell is, that's going to really help you a lot with managing your swarming. So anyway, just I wouldn't try to make them stop, because they're not going to stop. But newly sealed queen cells really need to be handled very gently. They're sensitive to temperature. They're sensitive to, you can knock them away from the royal jelly. So queens don't, when they spin their cocoon, they don't cover this end, because until they're really fully developed and they can't turn around and around anymore, like when they're spinning their web, they're still eating royal jelly. So you really don't want to knock them away from that royal jelly. And the cocoon doesn't go across the top of the cell, so they have access of royal jelly through that whole period. So just because I got this picture, I saw that on Facebook, and the person thought, I'm gonna have a super huge big queen. But that is so wrong. That could be a very poor queen, because what happened was the frame was handled too roughly, and that little larvae got knocked down further, and the royal jelly's way up there, and that becomes a problem. So, and then if you get too many cells, say I had a bunch of, I took out the old queen and let them raise 3 cells, and then they're getting to the point where they're starting to thin the wax down, I can transplant those cells. I can say I've got other colonies that are strong, but they're not swarmy, and I want to make a couple nukes to sell, or I want to replace some older queens in my other colonies. I can fill up a queen castle with some, 2 frames of bees and some brood, and I can transplant the cell. I can cut the cell. That's my knife. It's a bad picture. It's hard to tell. It's an old picture before cell phones got really good cameras. But I'm cutting out this cell, and then I push my thumb into the warm wax, and it makes a dent, and then I just put the cell, wax sticks to wax. I push the cell in there very, very gently. I do this all very gently. But by this point, you can see that they've started to thin down the tip. It's not mottled at all down here. So at this point, she's pretty hardy, that queen in there. And then they attach it. They will attach that really firmly, and the queen will come out, and it's their queen because she emerged there. And if she's in a queen castle, I put her in with all young bees, and she's ready to go. So that's my last slide. That's my quick top on swarming. I don't know if there's any questions or anything, but that's it.
Yeah, anybody have any questions?
Yes, this is Andy. It's not a question, but I'm going to blurt out anyway. Karen, you are amazing. These photographs, I feel like I've been walking around inside a hive with you these last few minutes. It's like National Geographic. It's enormously helpful.
I use my cell phone. I always have my cell phone.
Right.
What I do is it's hard to hold a frame and take a picture, but what I do is I brace my cell phone on top of the hive with my hive tool on the frames. My hive tool's on the frame, the flat end's on the frame, and the curvy end, my cell phone's butted up against it. And then I put it on the time photo, and then I get my frame all set up, and it snaps a picture. So, I don't have 3 hands.
Brilliant. I want to admit that I'm intimidated. You are noticing the thickness of the wax of a cell on a frame in the brood chamber in a hive, and you're noticing when the queen appears to have lost weight. I'm lucky to remember where my 2 hives are, never mind notice weight loss on the queen. How often do you go into a hive?
Well, what I really notice is she's running. I don't like runny queens. So I know, usually they're just kind of moseying around, going about their business, and sometimes they act like a bulldozer and kind of plow through the other bees if you've got her upset about something. But when she's really bombing around, that's when I notice, and you notice then, well, you're kind of slender, lady. you know, they don't have that big fat round, like, they don't waddle when they're walking. They're like they're running. So yeah, you can notice that, and you don't always see the queen every time you open a colony, but you would see the cells. The cells are really going to tell you a lot. Like if I open a colony and it's all cap brood, and more advanced larvae like 4 instar or 5 instar, I know something's going on. Either A, I could have lost my queen, or
Did you just
B,
take my cutting board that I got out?
it's if the time of the year, it's probably that they're preparing her for flying. Now the other option is to clip the wings. When I worked in a apiary in Florida, like the first day I started working there, I was grafting queens, and a swarm came out of the colony and landed in the tree. And so I went and got the guy, and I said, swan came out of the colony and landed in the tree. He goes, that's okay, they'll go back. He just like nonchalantly, I'm like, okay. So I go back to work, and didn't the bees fly right back into that colony? And so I said, how did you know that? He said, because the queen's got a clipped wing. She can't fly away with them. What she'll do is walk out and go on the bottom board, and they'll cluster under the beehive on the bottom board, and then I'll collect them. And that's exactly what happened. So I haven't clipped queens, but if she's a very important queen, I probably would clip. I have the scissors. I just usually stay on top of things.
I was just gonna ask if you ever did that, clipping queens.
I have, but not my own queens. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Places I've worked. I see Keith's got the owl spinning around there, so
Right.
I can stop my share. I gotta
Yeah,
get
you
to
can
the,
keep going.
Right. Yeah,
um,
really the only other thing was, and you covered a lot of what was in the videos that I had with, and maybe I can just.
well, I don't always agree with Paul Kelly. You know how all beekeepers have their own ways and ideas. When Paul
Yes.
Kelly's going to be the speaker for MSBA in the fall. He's our
Yes.
speaker.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, I can't say I always agree with his methods.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like they clipped their queens, and then they were into the regimented clip the queens, remove cells every 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who's really got time for that, unless you're, beekeeping is your profession.
Right.
Really. So you better off just paying attention to what's going on in your every 7 days, and preparing for the worst.
So the only other video that I had that might be good to show is about swarm luring, which was University of Florida. The other ones are kind of too long. So let me see if I can do that.
Just remember to hit the sound when you share the screen, the bottom left-hand corner.
Right.
You've got to hit that box.
Keith, I need to be a host. Hopefully this will work. I'm basically just going to play it off of YouTube and then share it. So
Yeah.
no, I'm still disabled. So while we're waiting for that, I have a question, Karen. It's because I
Okay.
just added some supers, well, not supers, but I added some honey, but I added it on top, and it was more for food because it's going to be rainy for the next couple days. But I didn't really, I mean, it was room temperature. It wasn't super
Yeah.
warm. I don't know. I'm thinking that might be the wrong.
Well, as long as it's not really, really cold, I'm sure you're warmer than we are. Like our wind chill was below freezing. Of course, wind chill does affect colonies.
Right.
I was gonna say Celsius, it was -7. I've got the Celsius brain now, so that's probably like 28 or 29 Fahrenheit. So
Oh, great. There we go. Okay, so this woman is from University of Florida. And I will just start it. It's about swarm, just setting up swarm traps and luring.
Home internet, what a pain in the.
Many people tell me that they put up swarm traps every year and don't catch any swarms. So in this
It's
video,
not
I'm going to look
right.
at 5 mistakes.
Lindy, I think you pressed the wrong button. Instead of hit
I
play, you
think I did. Thank you. There we go.
you can make it full screen.
Hi, and welcome
Okay.
to this presentation on how to successfully lure a swarm of honeybees. I mean, who doesn't like freebies, right? And not to mention the exhilaration of watching your trap attract those scout bees in the final swarm. Swarming is a process whereby a group of bees split from its original colony, leave the nest, and search for and or move into a nest site. Honeybee swarms are a normal sign of a productive, strong colony. Swarms are considered colony-level reproduction, which differs from individual bee reproduction, like when more bees are produced within a colony. During the swarm, about 50 to 70% of the worker bees rush out of the hive, though this percentage varies, herding the old queen out as they go. The original colony will remain at the nest site, rear a new queen, and continue as a functioning colony. Several factors might initiate a swarm, such as colony congestion. As the population is growing, there is no room to expand in the nest, dilution of queen pheromones, increased availability of nectar and pollen, lengthening day-night, and queen age. It has also been shown that when a colony is overcrowded, they might swarm, and there's evidence to suggest that the number of bees in relation to the size of the hive determines swarming. Now, scout bees, bees that search for a new home site, have very specific nest preferences. According to Dr. Thomas Seeley, those are nest size preference of 40 liters, and sometimes acceptable between 10 to 100 liters. Nest location 21 feet off the ground, but sometimes they might choose lower or higher, and an entrance diameter of 2 to 5 inches. The nest is also preferred to be enclosed so that they can better thermoregulate and defend. Now that I've explained to you the basic reasonings behind the swarming behavior of honeybees, I will show you some of the equipment that you can use as a lure. As mentioned, the preferred nest size is about 40 liters, but that's not to say again you can't lure them with other nest container sizes. A typical Langstroth hive, as here, holds about 10 frames and is about 40 liters. And a nuke hive, as here, holds about 5 frames, is roughly 20 liters. Make sure also not to use a screen bottom board, as a draft might deter the swarm. I also have this flower pot-like trap that can be purchased from most beekeeping supply stores, or you can make your own. Personally though, I like using these Langstroth hives over the flower pot method, as there's no need to transfer the bees over, like in the flower pot. There are also attractants that might make your trap more attractive to scout bees, such as old broodcomb, lemongrass, or commercially made swarm attractants. Now, when using old broodcomb as an attractant, you might use a frame of old built-out comb or a piece of comb. I like to place only one frame into the box, since the scout bees, when choosing their nest size, are looking for the correct amount of space. If all of the frames are placed in the box, it is quite possible the bees will perceive it as having less space. That's not to say they won't swarm into it without all of them in, but in this discussion, we're talking about the preferred choices of scout bees and swarming preferences. Having a frame of old broodcomb will work great, or one trick you can do is take a frame, like I have here, without foundation, and place some of the old broodcomb onto it. I apply beeswax to a new paint stick and glue it into the top of the frame, as you can see here. A small amount of broodcomb is attached to it. This method may be for the more advanced beekeeper, as foundationless beekeeping takes a little more management on the beekeeper's side. For the flower pot, though, I will glue a small amount of old broodcomb to the upper back side, as shown here. Entrance inducers are also very important and need to be placed at the entrance as well, as to reduce them to right around 2 to 5 inches. When using some sort of attractant, you can increase your odds of luring a swarm. You can buy commercially made lures that are either complex with aromatic smells or use simple lemongrass. When using any type of attractant, it's very important not to use too much. Usually 1 drop of lemongrass or a few squirts of the commercially made attractant is all that is required. Generally, the odorants will dissipate and need to be reapplied weekly. There are some attractants, though, that can be purchased that emit the odors over an extended period of time as an option as well. So now that you know the basics of why bees swarm and what type of home they're looking for, I'm going to show you how to hang the flower pot swarm trap up in a tree. Now remember, a typical swarm is looking for a nest that is located about 21 feet off the ground. Now that's not to say they possibly could choose a different height, as some swarms will even go into water meters at ground level. Swarm trap height variation is similar to nest box size variation, as honeybees don't read books and are free to choose what they want. For safety and ease, I will hang the trap about 12 feet off the ground, as I'm not one that likes heights. I'd also like to mention that I've had luck placing the traps on tops of sheds and benches. It's really fun to experiment and see where you can lure a swarm. There have even been instances where I have heard of colonies swarming to old beekeeping boxes that were stored somewhere like on the ground. So you can see, bees don't always follow the rules. Most importantly, make sure to follow your state's guidelines for swarm collection. For instance, here in the state of Florida, it is required to always requeen a swarm. This is the act of removing and killing the original queen and replacing her with a queen of known genetics. The reasoning behind this is that the genetics of the swarm are unknown and the possibility of spreading defensive African-derived genetics is quite high. I wish you all the best of luck in luring honeybee swarms and that you get as much joy from it as I do. There is nothing better than seeing the entrance of your trap, picking up the activity of a quorum of scout bees, and finally witnessing a full-on swarm. So okay, let's go hang up the trap. And remember, safety first. Okay, so here we have some examples of swarm traps that don't even follow the protocol. And here we have a perfect example of just a bucket that someone did. Place it up there, cost $2 as a swarm trap. And then we even have some that have been placed down at ground level, and one that was even successful in luring a swarm in a nuke box.
Yeah, look what this one. Cool.
Well, some of it is good. Oops, let me set that off.
Option 10. If I can spring grabs. Oh, right now.
Well, that was that.
Yeah.
What was the other one that you had there that had 5 swarm trap mistakes?
Oh, let me pull it up again.
Started to play when you meant to go to the one you just played.
Right.
Well, we don't want to see the mistakes. Well, they might repeat them. From other people's
No.
mistakes.
Here it is. Let's see what he has to say. It's only 5 minutes.
You gotta share your screen.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Got it. Everything's on. Something's happening. Maybe.
So in this video, I'm going to look at 5 mistakes you may be making in your swarm trapping, keeping you from catching more swarms. Mistake number 5 is putting your swarm traps up in the wrong season. I see some people who are trying to trap swarms in the summer or in the fall, and it's possible, especially in the fall, that you could catch a swarm, but this is not swarm season. Even if you catch a swarm then, the chances of them surviving is low. So you need to put up your swarm traps at the right time, which is swarm season, and preferably a week or 2 before the swarms start flying. If you don't know when swarm season is in your area, this is in spring. To get the exact timing, it's best to talk to beekeepers in your area. Depending on the temperatures and the climate in your area, it'll be a little different, but if you connect with local beekeepers, they will tell you when the swarm season is in your area, and you want to get your traps up before this time by a week or two and leave them up throughout that swarm season. If you're already a beekeeper, you know this is the same time that your bees are trying to swarm. So mistake number 5 is trying to trap swarms when it's not swarm season. Mistake number 4 is not elevating your swarm traps. It is possible to catch swarm traps with traps sitting on the ground even, but this is not what is best because this isn't what bees do in nature. Dr. Tom Seeley's research discovered that the vast majority of natural colony entrances are over 15 feet high. So it's best if you elevate your swarm traps, do it safely, but put them 10 to 15 feet in the air hanging from a tree. Stable is the best place and best way to increase your chances of catching swarms. So mistake number 4 is not elevating your swarm traps like the bees are looking for in nature. Mistake number 3 is not using an attractant. You are just one site of many the bees might be looking at, so putting in an attractant can really make your trap stick out. What do we have for attractants? One is brood comb. If you're a new beekeeper and you don't have old brood comb, again, contact local beekeepers. There's some beekeepers that will be culling old comb from their colonies, and this will work for you for your swarm traps. In addition to old comb, or if you can't get old comb especially, the second attractant you want to add to your swarm trap is a swarm lure, one that mimics the Nasonov pheromone that the swarms use to find that home site. Our personal preference is a lure we developed called Swarm Science, and this mimics the Nasonov pheromone and will help draw more swarms to your swarm trap. The second biggest mistake swarm trappers make is not putting frames inside of their traps. This doesn't change whether you'll attract swarms or not, but it'll greatly change the amount of work you have to do once you do get a swarm. There are commercially available round, almost bucket-looking swarm traps. I've seen many people that make swarm traps out of 5-gallon buckets because they're cheap and easy, and I understand that. But if you don't put frames inside of your swarm traps, what you'll end up with is a mess. It'll cost you time, and this new colony of yours, it'll cost them energy. So the second biggest mistake swarm trappers make is not putting frames inside of their traps. Frames allow those bees that are in a prime wax-making state to put their energy into making comb that you can use once you remove this swarm. Don't waste that energy by putting up a swarm trap that doesn't have frames. Whether they're frames with a starter strip or frames with foundation, however you choose to do it, put frames in your swarm trap so that you can save your time and also save this new colony's time and energy that they put into building comb. And the number one mistake swarm trappers make is using too small of a swarm trap. It's very convenient to use a 5-frame nuke or a corrugated plastic one you may have gotten when you purchased a nuke. They're convenient, they're pretty lightweight, transportable, and we've all kept colonies in this 5-frame deep nuke box. So it seems like, why couldn't we get a swarm? Extensive studies by Dr. Tom Seeley finds that this is too small. Is it possible? Yes. Are you going to catch as many swarms as you should? No. What you want is, his study found, about 47 liters of space. So what is that? That is very close to a deep box or a double 5-frame nuke box. A single is about half the amount of space you need. So even though it's convenient to use that nuke box you bought your first nuke in, or a small nuke box like this, it is not the best home site for bees, and you will miss out on many, many swarms. So the number one mistake is using too small of a swarm trap. Use a deep or double these up, make it a 5/5. Yes, it's heavier, it's a little harder to hang, but you will catch more swarms if you have the right amount of space. If you're making any of these mistakes, a few adjustments in your swarm trapping, and hopefully this season will be the best season you've had swarm trapping. If you think there's other common mistakes swarm trappers make, I'd love if you'd share in the comments and let me know what they are, and happy trapping, everyone.
Yeah.
Where is that going?
Yeah, I love how he says, don't leave them up.
Yeah, stop that.
Even if you're not gonna catch a viable swarm, it's better than it going into somebody else's building.
That's true.
You know.
I buy a lemongrass plant every year. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not a perennial, but it grows to 2 or 3 feet, and whenever I need to bait a trap, I just clip a couple off and mash them around, and it's lemongrass, so it works for a little bit. It's not probably as good as the lures and the essential oils.
Well, and you don't want to overdo it either.
Right.
And he said, he was controversy compared to the first video, because he said, fill the box with frames. She said, don't fill the box with frames because they need to
Right.
have the space. They need to measure the space.
I
And
think
when you
that's a good
see
point.
Tom's videos, the bee is walking all around measuring the space, on all his videos.
Yeah.
So they can't do that walkabout if they've got frames in there. So I
Yeah, I
would
think-
choose not to put the frames in and just have it in a place where I could really keep my eye on it. So
Agreed.
if it's
Yeah,
in my
just-
Karen,
yard,
you would put no frames at all? You'd put an empty
One
10
frame.
frame?
Maybe,
Oh,
yeah.
one frame, okay. And I was told once that you want to to not put in drawn comb, because if it goes AFB, then it might, they might put that AFB infected nectar into the swarm trap. And if you have them no foundation, then they have to digest it, and that would kill off the AFB. Did I
Well,
understand that right?
that
Partly true, yeah.
could be a problem, but what you really want to do is when you have the swarm and you get them set up, put them in an isolation yard before you bring them home. That's
Right.
the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
You can put in that little piece of old foundation like she showed, glued to a paint stick, and they're not gonna, store really honey in that. But even then, you really should have an isolation yard. Everybody should have a yard they could just temporarily use to isolate colonies if they need to, a sick yard, basically.
And is it required by law or regulation to have it inspected before moving it home?
No,
Hmm.
not that I know of. Here it is, and I never heard of that in Maine. Now,
Okay,
in
if you sell one, you have to be
You would
inspected.
kind of want to, though.
yeah,
I
I
would
would
want to.
I would inspect it myself, and if
Right.
I didn't feel confident, I would have someone else inspect it.
Yeah.
But then
it-
again, you're not gonna know until the brood is like by the 4th or the 5th instar, and sometimes it doesn't even show up for quite a long time. So it's really, it's good to have the isolation yard and keep them there until they've gone through a brood cycle. So you're looking at, a good 30 days or 35 days in another yard before you move them in near your bees.
Do you know if is there a point where Beltsville can test for AFB, or those little
Well, you can't test
Tester.
it. You
Right.
could test it, but you're not going to get a reading until you're seeing something that you're suspicious of. You can't
Right.
just like squish a bee from the swarm and test it.
right?
But if it's not prevalent in the area, I wouldn't be real worried. I would just put them in an isolation yard and then bring them home. But if it was in certain areas of Massachusetts right now, I probably wouldn't even have a swarm trap out.
Yeah,
Because
no
they're
kidding.
hot with it right now.
Well, I want to share a mistake that I made so that others can avoid it. A friend and I put a 10 frame deep up in a tree next to commercial, there are probably 20 commercial hives. And the good news is we caught a swarm. The bad news is we didn't have a way to get it down. It was extremely heavy.
Yeah, that's a
And
tricky
fortunately,
one.
my friend was a lot stronger. So since then, we have wrapped the swarm trap with nylon webbing with carabiners on it, and we have rigged up a block and tackle. We haven't caught one since, but that time that we caught it, it was backbreakingly heavy, and it was way up. We had to go. My
Wow.
friend actually did all the work on a
Yeah,
ladder. I don't know how.
They pile in nectar and they grow so fast that if you don't notice them in the first couple of days, they're just, they're booming and they get heavy. So yeah. And maybe with the new system, it's not real stable. They don't like any jiggling at all. So
Hmm.
maybe you have to attach it strongly to the tree and then take those attachments off, even though you have the rope and the pulley system.
We mounted it. Our secret of success was my friend had a deer hunting stand that straps on
Oh,
the tree
okay.
without hurting the
Yeah.
tree. We strapped it to that, so that was rock solid steady. But the problem was getting it off that and down the ladder was not easy.
Right.
So we have done a practice before. So we put the block and tackle on the branch up above it and hoist it up that way. One guy can just push it away from off the edge of the stand while it's in midair, and then the
Yeah.
other guy lowers it down. It's a lot more civil than pure brute
yeah.
force up on a ladder.
I'd rather split a colony to get the increase than go through that.
Right.
Splitting so much easier.
Yes, yes.
It's always
That's
fun to
It's-
get freebies though.
Yeah.
I have, you can run in, most swarms are very calm, but I've run into some real nasty ones, what they call dry swarms. That's either they've been aggravated to no end, wherever they landed, or they've been there a long time and they've eaten everything that was in their honey crop and now they're hungry. But my worst, meanest, wickedest swarm was the on-ramp in Freeport coming up to Desert Road. There was back-to-back signs. One side said wrong way, turn around, and the other one said like, right or left to wherever you're going. So they got between, so there was a 4x4 post, so they got between the two posts, but tractor trailer trucks and everything was whizzing by, and there were so many squished bees on that on-ramp, because they were getting blown by the wind of everything going by, and they were nasties. I'll get out. I had to put on my bee suit. I mean, I had regular sneakers on, so I swear I got stung 50 times on each ankle, but I was determined to save them. I kept getting, and I was getting calls from the Freeport police saying, people are reporting there's bees all over the road and blah, 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 So, and I did end up getting them out of there. I had to brush them out onto the tailgate of my truck and then get them into a hive. And I had to back my truck right up so the tailgate was right against that post. And I got them in a hive and I brought them to my isolation yard, and they ended up queenless because I figured the queen was one of the hit by car casualties, but oh man, that was like, what a nightmare that was. I really never got stung that many times by a swarm ever. They were nasty as all get out. But then after they got requeened, and they weren't nasty bees, it was just a nasty situation, I guess. So that was my worst nightmare swarm.
I think my worst nightmare was that I had to go collect a bee swarm at night. So it was dark out, put the headlights on them, and it was in someone's front yard. So, my bee yard was right next to it.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I didn't put elastics on my pants. So that was the last time I made that mistake, because I had a lot of stings up and down my legs, but I got them. They were really like, 10, not even 5 feet off the ground. So it was just a cherry picker kind of swarm, but nighttime is not a great time either.
Yeah. Bees can see at night.
Yeah.
And do people have tricks for, I know we're talking about trapping them, but if they're just hanging onto a branch up high, is there a clever approach for getting them into a hive?
I have, it's a 5-gallon water jug that goes into a water cooler. You've seen those before, that you put the handle
sure.
of on an extender for painting ceilings or whatever. Those work beautifully.
So, how is the water jug fastened to the
You
telescoping rod?
you cut the bottom off the jug, and you take
Yes.
the small neck, and you put
Yes.
a paint roller. You cut on the paint roller handle, you cut the part where the roller goes on, and you just have that handle, and you stand it upright in the neck and you put painter's tape on the bottom of the neck, and then you fill it with epoxy so
Epoxy,
that
that's
you
what I was
can
waiting for.
screw your paint handle into the handle that's now epoxied into the neck. And then I have a video of that, of my son catching a swan with it. But anyways, it works very easily, even to the point where like you can stand on a ladder and not have to climb up really high. I would stand on, stand in the bed of my pickup truck or on the tailgate and get myself an extra few feet. And, I stopped climbing ladders a long time ago, but I do use that. And if it's beyond that, Ellie, to cut down the tree. Well, I've seen somebody shoot a branch off with a shotgun before, and the bees landed in a big foomp, and they buzzed all around and went back on the branch that was still on the ground. So I could get away with that up here, but I couldn't have in Yarmouth.
I'm trying to find the guy's name, but there's a guy out in Sacramento, beekeeper out there. And he basically does the same thing as Karen, except for he uses a 5-gallon bucket. And he has clamps on the side of the bucket, clamps it to a pole, extendable pole. And he actually builds a little piece inside and puts bee comb in there, calls it a throne. And instead of having to go up and thump and then dump them in a box, he props that up in the tree. And a lot of times they'll move into that for him and then brings it down and does it. I want to say like Blue Green Horizons or something, but I'm not finding it on Facebook at the moment.
Another option besides the paint poles are great. I haven't made one yet, but I got a I'm such a Yankee. Anything on sale that I think I might be able to use, I buy it. So I bought a pool cleaner extension pole, which is really long, and it's like aluminum, so it's really lightweight, but I haven't fastened I haven't epoxied a bucket or anything at the end yet, but that seemed like a good long extension that was pretty sturdy, was an aluminum pool cleaner. One of the things that you do, the nets, whatever.
I kind of want you guys to tell them your worst one stories. Tractor trailer stopped behind TD Bank North's headquarters building in West Falmouth. And he must have run over to Hannaford and gotten a sandwich or something. But I got a call from a pest control company, and I went back there with my trailer and spent 3 to 4 hours with 5-gallon buckets, scooping them out of the tree and off the fence, and dumping them into hive boxes. And yeah, I got a few stings on that. What worked, and they were just basically, there were bees that were coming out of blueberry. He stopped during the day, they fly up off the net, he drives away, they have nowhere to go. And that's mean bees. I took the artificial queen pheromone lures, the little jelly things, stapled them to the top of frames in those different boxes. Nice. And basically just spent like 3 or 4 hours there, scooping, dumping, waited till dark, took the trailer up, drove it to my North Yarmouth yard and parked it. And then went through and pulled all those queen pheromones off and just shook the bees out in front of my other hives. I made a real good honey crop that year. Treated for mites several times after that. And, it was HE double toothpicks, but yeah.
Brutal.
Good story.
Are there commercially made bucket extensions? Karen, I love the elegance of yours, epoxy and a paint roller handle. You're on mute, Karen.
I was looking for the video I have on it, but I do have it in a video, but I can't seem to find it.
Karen, I wonder with the water bottle one, I'm trying to picture it, when you have the bees in the bucket, can you bring that straight down? So, or are
No,
you gonna have to?
I
tilt
put
it and
my
make it go up?
hive body I'm dumping into the length of the pole, so I bring the pole down and dump them in, and then
Okay,
back up
that's what I
again.
was wondering.
Yeah, I
Okay,
just
okay.
judge the space. I do have a video of a queen castle swarming if you want to see that.
Let's see it.
Sure.
Actually,
Okay.
what times are we wrapping up?
Yeah, it's 8:15, so.
All right, 8:15. All right, yeah, we probably should.
Yeah. Chris, did you want to do anything with the meeting or?
It's just gonna be really quick, and I'll just
Yeah.
add, if you guys need help with catching a swarm, I have climbing gear and I do climb. So if you don't have a ladder that's big enough, give me a call.
There you go. Nice.
Except you, Karen, I can't help you up there.
Well, that's not fair.
Well, I can't get there in time to do it.
Yeah, they would fly away by the time you got here.
I've watched Chris climb. There's a reason his email address is monkey. He can climb like a monkey.
Tree monkey.
Tree, that's what I was trying to remember. What was monkey tree? Yeah, tree monkey,
Nice.
because he climbs like a tree monkey. Chris, what do you want to do for a business meeting?
It's gonna be really quick, cause our printer is not working, so I couldn't print out the minutes to read, so I'm gonna put it out there that if everybody that received the minutes are okay with it, I make a motion to accept.
Yep.
And seconded, all in favor?
Yep.
Good. I think we have one newbie here tonight. No? No? Oh, okay. I guess then we're all good. Go to bed.
Jackie, come on, hopefully enjoyed the conversation. Thanks. Gotcha.
One note on the club hives is that Keith and I met over at Tidewater today. So that looks good for us moving things back there. So we got a good couple of strong hives and we'll start some open hives soon.
Not the same place, right?
Similar but different.
Yeah, it's not going to be near the gardens. It'll be kind of off to the side and a little more sheltered.
Probably like 100 yards away from where they were.
And no Russians.
Well,
Yeah, they were right.
Any bees are chippy, they leave. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they were pretty adamant about that. But should be fun.
All right. I mean, the one that was
Yes,
chippy went to my yard, it stormed, requeened, whatever, and it's been nice. So. Hasn't
Chris,
been
I've got a
mean.
mentor update.
Yep. Go for it, mentor.
Since our last meeting, we had 4 beekeepers sign up to volunteer. Chris Baldinelli, Jen Gray, George Thial, Donna Green. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to all of them. 5 new beekeepers requested and were immediately assigned mentors. So we now have 21 mentors helping 14 new beekeepers, which is terrific. I've got the best job in the club. People are so good at volunteering. It's really, really fantastic. And if anyone would like to be a mentor, you only need 1 year's experience to be a mentor. Or if you are looking for a mentor, please send an email to me at to.andy.meyer@gmail.com. I think it's on our website. And let me know what your name is, what town you're in, and what it is you're looking for. Are you looking to be a mentor or looking for a mentor? And I'll set you up. And that's my report.
Thank you.
Business.
So
Hey,
does next month your open hive start, so there won't be an online meeting? Is that what you're gonna do now?
Yeah, but we may, depending on the location, maybe we'll bring a camera and stream it if there's internet available wherever it's at.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful that would be, but
I know Mark Cooper mentioned that they're gonna have theirs if they're around their same date that they always have it. I don't have my phone on me right now, so. Wait a minute, I lied.
think it's
It's usually like late June, right?
Yeah,
Mid to late June.
so yeah, he said their open hive is good to go in June. So what I'll do is I will double check with him to find out the exact date, and then I will send out the date to the complete, club email.
I've streamed a hive inspection before. I live streamed it. I had somebody else, I had my Bluetooth earbuds in, and they just used my cell phone. It worked out beautifully, so I know it does work if you ever try that. I
Hmm.
did it.
How did you do the
With-
video?
with
Oh, did you
Zoom.
do it through your phone, the video?
I used my phone as the video, and I hooked the phone up, I went on Zoom with my phone, and then I live streamed my video off of my phone, and then with my earbuds and my Bluetooth earbuds, that was my microphone, basically.
Right.
It worked out really nice. I put had a Wi-Fi extender. I had a hive in my yard to do this, and I put a Wi-Fi extender off my house Wi-Fi and just used my Wi-Fi to do it. So I
Hmm.
know it works. If I can figure it out, anybody can, because I am not a
That's gonna
computer
be
person.
tricky with the club hives where they are. It's gonna be, we have to get the Wi-Fi to the place first.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be the tricky part. Unless it like a hotspot or something.
Right.
You heard?
Chris, do we
Okay.
have any other business, membership or treasurers or?
I think Megan is in New Brunswick, so I don't think there's a treasurer report, and I don't see Janet on the list.
Right, figure out what we did for old business.
Old business this time would be new business last time. But, new business.
All right, anything new, any new business?
I guess new business would be the club hives and when we're gonna move them, but we'll email you when that's gonna take place.
Okay,
That'll be soon. Probably in the next couple weeks. We'll move them over to Tidewater.
all right.
Okay,
Anything
I'm gonna say good night, because it's 9:30 here. I'm in a different time zone.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks
Yeah,
so
you're
much. That
welcome.
was awesome.
Oh, you did.
Fabulous. Really nice job, Karen. That was,
Yeah.
that was terrific.
Thank you. It's very informative.
Okay, good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, Karen.
We
I'm gonna go
adjourn.
check my queens and see if they look like they're losing weight.
Yeah, there you go, Andy. Andy, I was gonna say, if you ever have issues with it sounds like you're next to a great swarming catching place.
Well, it's actually blueberry fields up in Brunswick. We drive to go up there. My friend owns the field and he hires the commercial beekeeper. He rents the hives. So I figured if he's got
Oh.
20, 30, 40 hives sitting there feasting on blueberries,
Oh, wow.
hate to see those swarms go to waste. So
Right. Yeah.
Andy, what you need to
Yes,
think
Chris.
about, you guys, setting up swarm traps is maybe get together with Keith's son for that swarm trap that he did. Cause that
Oh,
one. is
yes, for this
up on a
Eagle Scout
pole.
project.
You can twist that down and stuff, so you're not climbing anything. That
Yes,
might be something to look into.
that's, I'm trying to remember, was that I did watch that. What was it? The swarm traps was on a pole? Oh, that's right. It was on like a 2x4 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4x4, and then there was a little
4x4.
little sled up top. I can send pictures of it.
Yeah, that would be something, then there's no climbing involved, you just lower the pole down,
Right,
take your cap
like a
off.
flagpole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're done.
Yeah, you've assessed my climbing abilities quite well, Chris. I think I'm best off with my feet on the ground.
As long as you don't have falling skills.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
That's my problem. The climbing's all right. It's the falling I'm not good at.
I'm good at bouncing.
Andy, I think
Sounds
if you
sensible.
just fine and put some wine and some cheese and crackers up there.
That's right. I may fall and get hurt, but I wouldn't feel the pain.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lindy.
Great.
Thank you. Oh, it's already gone.
Thanks. See everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you, Keith.
Very well.